isn't really known for its in-depth reporting. So I was kind of shocked to find a piece regarding House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, written by Edward Isaac Dovere, that was like the most comprehensive, lengthy CNN article of all time, okay? I mean, many pages long, and all it was a massive butt-kissing fest for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that just blew my mind. So we have some excerpts for you. This is not an example of a hard-hitting journalist speaking truth to power. In fact, this is a pretty good example of someone who seems pretty dumb and feckless.
One of my prayers is that the Republicans will take back their party.
Things keep dripping out, drip, 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 and the truth comes out.
The truth comes out. Now, we've been on Edward Isaac Dovere and the way that he covers politics. He's obviously very pro-establishment. And he talks about how Nancy Pelosi is gonna seek re-election, even though she's in her 80s, and might even try to maintain her position as House Speaker after the 2022 midterm elections. Now, that's all great and dandy, but let's get into how he reported on this. So he says, in a series of interviews with key aides and more than 24 House Democratic members, a portrait emerges of a leader who still commands respect and no small measure of fear within her caucus. By the way, we're just getting started. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Let me give you more. She shepherded Biden's COVID-19 rescue plan last spring and his massive infrastructure plan this fall, and then delivered the most transformative social spending program in generations through her chamber. Each one could be a capstone to an already historic career.
I think that if the person writing her biography wrote it, they would be embarrassed.
This is so embarrassing.
I think that if her PR agent wrote it, they'd be embarrassed. Like, capping an already historic career, she shepherded these amazing, wonderful bills through. Okay, look, there's a couple of different things here. Number one,
it's not accurate, first of all.
Yeah,
let's address that.
The greatest social spending program, it made it sound like it passed. Yes, it passed the House, but Pelosi knows that it doesn't have a good chance of passing the Senate. In fact, the order in which she passed them in the House made it harder for it to pass the Senate.
Yes.
And therefore made it less likely that it'll come into law. And Pelosi knows that. And Dovere also knows that. But he's choosing to lie to you guys and make it seem like she did something heroic, when in reality, if you know politics at all, she did the opposite. She made it harder for it to get into law because of how she betrayed her original promise to pass it in the different order to put pressure on the Senate.
Right.
If Dovere doesn't know that, he should be fired immediately. If he does know it and he chose to kiss her ass and make her seem like a hero when she actually torpedoed that bill, well, that doesn't speak well of him either.
Right. No, I mean, it's amazing. So one thing I want to comment on is the massive infrastructure bill, which, that bill allocates a little over $1 trillion in infrastructure spending, but not all of it is new spending. In fact, a lot of that money has been repurposed from unspent COVID relief funding. What was the new spending in this massive infrastructure bill? Cenk, wasn't it something around the tune of like $550 billion?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So again, he's going with the mythology that it was the billions, trillions of dollars when it was repackaged.
Right.
So guys, you have to ask yourself as you're going through pieces like this, what is the agenda of this organization? The one that's pretending to be a news organization with this news reporter. Why are they framing issues in a way that is clearly biased? I mean, they pretend to be the most neutral and objective. Look, and by the way, so we're criticizing them as progressives and as other actual news people because we know the facts of what happened, and it's obvious that they're fitting this to make a hero out of her. And by the way, later in the piece, other corporate Democrats and pretending that they're progressive. They also bash progressives. The agenda is super obvious.
Yes.
But if you're a right winger, you also think, really? I mean, why are you calling all of her legislation the greatest thing on earth when we hate it? right? So the agenda is so brazen while they pretend to be objective.
Okay, I gotta give you 2 more excerpts and then you can have at it because it's just insane. So later in the piece he writes, interviews with Nancy Pelosi's colleagues reveal a struggle to keep up with members who are less concerned with loyalty and allegiance and more willing to blow up negotiations for the sake of a boost on social media or TV. She faced repeated rebellions the last few months, they say. Now, he doesn't specifically refer to progressives in that excerpt, but that's who he's referring to, right? You know that he's talking about AOC, you know that he's talking about progressives who just wanted Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership to keep their end of the deal. And their end of the deal was, hey, we're not gonna hold a vote on the corporate loved bipartisan infrastructure bill until we get passage of the actual Build Back Better social spending bill that provides all of these provisions that would actually improve ordinary Americans' lives. Things like, mandatory paid family leave, things like universal pre-K, things like the child tax credit, which would have been made permanent. Those types of provisions that are tremendously popular and allegedly were part of Biden's agenda, right? And by the way, when he talks about the House passing the social spending package, he leaves out the fact that the House passed a pared back version of that cut out all of these provisions or cut back on all of these provisions that would improve people's lives. He didn't include any detail into that, but instead treated Nancy Pelosi, who reneged on her promise, as this master legislator. Let me give you more. So apparently Pelosi was not pleased with progressives threatening to vote no on the bipartisan infrastructure bill until they got passage of the social spending bill. Pelosi got so irritated with Congressional Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal that she gave the Washington State Democrat the silent treatment for several days, according to several lawmakers who heard of it from the shunned colleague. What type of high school BS is this? And maybe this is unfair for me to say, but it's how I feel. You happy, Pramila Jayapal? You happy? Right? I mean, she ended up reneging herself to please the Democratic leadership. Are they pleased? Doesn't seem like they're pleased. Seems like they're ready and willing to throw progressives under the bus every chance they get. Know your friends, know your enemies, including your enemies within your own party.
Yeah, there's so much to this. So now Jayapal apparently stood up to Pelosi slightly, which is actually great news. And this is the one thing I actually got that was news out of this, otherwise marketing trash for corporate Democrats, which I'll get to more than Pelosi on in a second. But apparently Jayapal stood up to Pelosi for half a second. But guys, the reason I tell you that, and Bowman's also quoted in this piece, is because these reporters come to people like Jayapal and Bowman and they say, now, it looks like you guys are the ones causing division. Are you causing division and hurting the Democratic Party? And then it puts Jayapal and Bowman in a position where they have to say, no, of course we want to unify and work. And Bowman says that the right-wing conservative Democrats never even reached out to us, pick up the phone. But guys, that even misses the point, honestly. Because there is no picking up the phone, they're voting based on what their donors want. And so when Pelosi made a promise to progressives that they would vote on the social spending bill first, otherwise it's not gonna pass the Senate, right? She violated that promise in this giant piece. He never mentions that. Dovere, the so-called reporter, never mentions it. He makes it seem as if the progressives were the ones that violated the pledge. So, but he does mention the promise that Pelosi made to moderates. He says, in a promise to moderates, the speaker had set an end of September date to put the infrastructure bill on the floor, but she had to keep pushing it back as progressives threatened to tank it unless they got a vote on the broader spending package at the same time.
Oh, those pesky progressives.
Oh, they threatened to tank it. And and she had to break the promise to the beloved moderates, right? Whereas you could frame it as the correct way, the factual way, which is, well, the reason progressives wanted the Senate to vote first is otherwise they might not vote at all. like they're doing right now.
Exactly.
They're not voting at all.
Exactly.
Progressives were 100% right about the leverage that they would lose in the House, but Dovere chose not to share that. And by the way, every editor of CNN that looked at this was a massive piece. They're like, boy, way to lie. Way to frame it so that the progressives look like bad guys and take the truth and put it on its head, turn it on its head, and make it seem like the moderates wanted the social spending and the progressives were tanking it. Can you believe them, right? Just don't listen to corporate media. They're lying to you on purpose. Corporations love that infrastructure bill, the one that he says is historic and amazing and wonderful. That's why they were always gonna pass that one. The social spending bill has stuff in it for you. That's why they weren't gonna pass it, and they did all of this, but he's not done yet. Then he goes to who might replace Pelosi. Okay, and of course, I could have told you, and I did, I said it in my head. If we were reading it together, I would have told you ahead of time. Hakeem Jeffries. And in fact, you've probably seen me say that probably about a dozen times on the show already. Everybody knows it's gonna be Hakeem Jeffries, right? They pretend, it could be Jayapal. And now they're doing the old trick that I told you about earlier as well. Well, I was gonna give it to Jayapal, but she didn't do as she was commanded. And by the way, you're a reporter and you're supposed to challenge the powerful, right? And that's supposed to be part of journalism. He's yelling at and criticizing people because they would not listen to commands of leadership. How dare they? And the whole point of the article is, well, without Pelosi, who could, these pesky progressives and others might not listen when they are commanded by leadership to do as they are told, right?
Yeah.
And you're a reporter, you're a joke, man.
Let me give you graphic 6 here, where he writes, admirers and detractors both confess to a sense of dread.
Oh, dread.
About what things will be like after Pelosi leaves.
After the dear leader leaves, she is so grand. She might be the son of God. As the North Korean dictators say, brought down by the sun god herself,
Yeah, her grip on House Democrats may be looser than it was, but whoever comes after her won't have anywhere near that control.
And they need that control. And us reporters love it when people in power have control. And the progressives are challenging that control of corporate rule and the donor. Oh, by the way, are the donors mentioned at all in the story? Is it mentioned? Actually, there is one reference to it, which I'll get back to in a second. Is it mentioned that Hakeem Jeffries is the heir apparent because he's also excellent at raising money from corporations?
Of course not.
No, it's not mentioned. It's mentioned as if, what do they say about Hakeem Jeffries? He says, oh my God, he's part of the Progressive Caucus. Yes, but what is called the Progressive Caucus is a joke, and every reporter knows it. Half the people are in there are part of the New Democrats, the Problem Solvers Caucus. These are very conservative caucuses.
Right.
They're jokes who join every caucus. They're not anywhere near progressive. In fact, in one part of the piece, he's like, now they're even disputing who's called a progressive. Yeah, because you used to lie. Reporters like you, CNN, over and over again would lie about corporate Democrats being progressive. And when actual progressives rose up, it made it inconvenient with that lie. So he's part of the Progressive Caucus, and he would do a more inclusive approach than Nancy Pelosi. Hakeem Jeffries, the new and improved corporate Democrat. So my God, he'd be even more inclusive than the dear leader, who was just the greatest, most historic person on earth. And of course, he has a quote from Hakeem Jeffries saying, when Nancy Pelosi passed those bills, it was her finest hour.
No, it's.
I mean, this is comical. Like, they should preserve this seriously in the museum for how to not do journalism.
100%. And I want to leave you with one more quote. It's not Hakeem Jeffries, but it is another corporate Democrat, Jake Auchincloss, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, who says this in regard to Nancy Pelosi. She was like a trauma surgeon for these bills.
Oh, come on.
There were so many times, sometimes multiple times a day, when a bill was dead and she was able to put the paddles on and revive it. Look, Democrats have a majority in the House. End of story, okay?
Yeah.
She's not a courageous leader. She's not a trauma surgeon on these bills. She is someone who does a great job raising money for the Democratic Party. But in regard to passing Joe Biden's agenda, which, to be clear, was in no way some, radical socialist agenda, she did not win and she did not succeed. And Democrats have failed over and over again, even though they hold the levers of power.
Okay.
Period. That's it. End of story. That's what the thesis of this piece should have been. The failure of the Democratic Party, even though they hold the levers of power.
And guys, I got to say last couple things here. The infrastructure bill was always going to pass. Look, how do you know? You can go back and look at our older videos before it passed, where we guaranteed you that it would pass. Why? Because corporations were in favor of it. All the donors were in favor of it. That's why Manchin and even some of the Republicans in the Senate are like, pass it, Pelosi, pass it, right? And so to make it seem like she's a hero of progressives for passing a bill that corporations wanted passed.
That her donors wanted.
And then to pretend as if it was like an open question. Will it pass? It wasn't gonna pass, but then Pelosi was so heroic and she made it pass. That is not at all what happened. It was always going to pass. It was a guarantee that infrastructure passed. The question was whether the social spending bill was gonna pass. It was never in question that infrastructure was gonna pass. The degree to which they lied to you is unbelievable. And look at the framing. The one time that he mentioned Pelosi's donors was he said, now she's raised nearly $1 billion for fellow Democrats. And he made it seem like such a positive. Now you could look at that and say, she's raised $1 billion mainly from corporations, and then corporations got giant handouts, including an infrastructure bill. And what is the thing that they took out of the social spending bill? They took out negotiating drug prices. Why? Because she's raised millions of dollars from drug companies and handed it to other Democrats. Instead of framing the $1 billion as corruption, he basically gives her a standing ovation over it. Does any actual human being that isn't a lying reporter, so-called reporter in Washington, D.C., believe that ExxonMobil and Pfizer and all of these companies gave $1 billion to Nancy Pelosi because she didn't deliver for them? That they just gave it for their health or for the general welfare or for charity? No, they did it to purchase her, and they succeeded, and they got everything they wanted. But lying corporate media flips it on its head and says, what a wonderful thing to take $1 billion from corporations and to serve them instead of you. And finally, he says, oh yeah, by the way, just as an aside, cute little aside here, the hero said she was gonna step down from leadership and now she's not going to. That's the whole point of the story, by the way. That's not an aside. That's why you started writing the story in the first place. You know what that is? A lie. She lied. She said, don't worry about me. I'm gonna step down from leadership. You don't have to worry about it. And then of course, and what did we tell you? Again, go back, watch old videos. We said she's lying. She's not gonna step down. She's obsessed with power. But did he frame it as a lie? No, he framed it as, they need her. This is the greatest hero of all time. They can't do it without her. Of course she had to say that she's not gonna step down. Otherwise the entire Democratic Party and the whole country would be in shambles. Okay, don't believe anything they write. I mean, this is unbelievable bias. It's overwhelming bias, and they know it. And they know it. They lie to you on purpose because they're not in the news business. They're a marketing arm of corporate rule. That's what Isaac Edwards Dovere is. He's the worst reporter. This is at least 4 times now we've covered stories that have been complete hatchet jobs and total lies. And CNN loves this and featured it to no end. Yay, corporate rule, corporate Democrats are the best. Bunch of total and utter liars, don't believe them. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.